Hello, this is Silas, and I'm recording this on October 1st of 2017. This is the day after there's been a terror attack in New York City. Authorities are reporting that this was a terror attack. Somebody went out, rented a van, drove down on, they have these bike paths where people can walk and ride their bicycles on the side of the streets, and they drove down this road for about 17 blocks and ran over, I think, over 30 people, injuring 20 something people, and I think 8 are dead at the time that I'm recording this. I'm going to check the news after and see if the numbers have changed. The person who did this apparently got out of the vehicle and started yelling Allahu Akbar, which is God is great in Arabic. He had a note in the car that was pledging his allegiance to ISIS, which is this Islamic terrorist group in the Middle East that has gone online and spreading their message out there, encouraging people to do these kind of attacks. And now there's this, when these terror attacks happen, people invariably start wondering, how safe are you? And the problem with terror attacks is they come out of nowhere, and this is the first actual deadly one that has occurred in New York City area, in this downtown New York City area since 9/11, which is the September 11th of 2001 attacks where the two planes were flown into the World Trade Center. This happens to be the second time that I've been in Nairobi and hearing stories about a terrorist attack happening in New York City. The last one was, I think, about a year and a half ago when I was hearing the stories about the two bombs that were on the streets. I think it was 27th Street and 7th Avenue in that area. And both the location of this truck attack, this van attack yesterday, and these previous attacks are places that I've walked around. I enjoy walking and I enjoy just seeing the city in that way and can imagine actually being in these places at that time. So it makes you really think, are we safer today? I heard from my friends, all of them are safe, and that was very encouraging to hear. But this is a thing that a lot of people talk about. Are we safer today than we have been in the past? Is the world becoming a much more dangerous place? And thinking about this, it reminded me of this post I did some years back, and I just wanted to read through it and update it and kind of give my thoughts on this, how we actually are safer today than we've ever been in human history. Yet a lot of people truly seem to feel that this is the most dangerous time to be alive and are just literally in a position where they can't really function in society because they think it's so dangerous, even in some places that are relatively safe. So there are two things that make me think that though the number of people suffering has increased, the prevalence of the condition of suffering itself has been reduced. And those two things are our awareness of the way things should be and the awareness of the way things are. So let's begin with the way things should be. We can admit that the lack of suffering, experiencing prosperity, being in good health, and other similar states are the way things are expected to be. So much so, this is so much so of an expectation that we consider these things to be normal. I'll put it this way, it's like waking up with all the fingers on your hands that you went to bed with is something that we take for granted. Now, if you woke up and there was a cat nibbling on your fingers, that would be an unusual way for most of us to wake up. And I consider this familiarity and expectance of the norm, quote unquote, to be a good thing. And I'd prefer we ignore these normal things, ignore these good things, and would be quite worried if we started switching to ignoring the things that were wrong. And I think there may be a danger that some of us are getting into this. So, back to that cat example. So imagine reading about the finger nibbling story from a few different sources. A friend of you sends you this message and, hey, do you hear about this cat story? Somebody chimes in on your social media wall and says, oh, I heard this and this about it. You go on to one or two of your favorite news sources and you hear different stories of it, and you go and you actually hear the original accounting of that story. So now that's about 5 or 6 different people telling you about this cat story. Now they're detailing different aspects of the story, they're giving you pictures, they're giving you testimony. Now, if you took this information and then you all of a sudden made the claim that there's an epidemic of man-eating cats and you start sleeping with steel mittens and you claim there should be some state agency that needs to be created to research what all these cats want, and then you start carrying around some catnip so you can offer that to any cat you see to protect you from it, you may be overreacting, or better put, you may be suffering from something, or let's call it felinophobia. So especially suffering from this if you ignore all the parts of the story stating that the person in question who had their fingers nibbled on had not fed their cat in days, and the night before they had passed out after drunkenly eating a tuna casserole with their hands. Like, that would probably be the simplest explanation, or the reason why this cat was nibbling on this person's fingers, and it's not something that you should just expect to happen in your house, especially if you don't own any cats. So, this brings me to the second part of this that makes me truly think that the number of suffering may have increased, but the condition itself has decreased, and that is the way things are. So we are better at collating information. And by collating, I just mean getting different information and putting it together and presenting it and having access to it. This access to information, this ability, this relation that we have with information is part of the reason you even heard of this cat finger eating person to begin with. Let's get into a thought experiment of sorts. Picture an area of about 50 square miles. This is 1965 America, comprised of about 100 homes, so it's not that, it's rather sparsely populated. And over the course of a year, 50 of those homes are broken into. Now, due to the lack of information gathering and sharing, only 10 of those break ins are general knowledge to any person in this 50 square kilometer area. So that is a total percentage of break ins at 50%, with the general populace being aware of 10 break ins. So they would estimate that the security is about 10 to 15%. Like, there's a 10% chance your home is going to be broken into, since they know there's only 100 homes in that area, and 10 of those homes they know of have been broken into. Now, fast forward to the present day, 2017. That same 50 square mile area is now compromised of 1,000 homes. Over the last year, over the span of a year, 100 homes have been broken into. So, since it's also the information age, 90% of those break ins were widely reported, and the other 10% discussed in general conversation. So the percentage of break-ins at the homes is 10%. So that's 100 out of 1,000 homes are broken into. The general populace is clearly aware of 90 of those break-ins, and having heard of few unreported break-ins, they could actually estimate that the security is about 20 to 25%. So why would they do this? Let's say these 90 homes that they've broken into, they've seen pictures, they've talked to the people, they've actually driven by the homes. There was people live tweeting what was happening at the time, or maybe they're seeing pictures where they're thinking, oh, that home is a lot like my home. I can probably see somebody coming into my home in the same way that they entered that home. So that kind of access to information can make somebody think that the insecurity in that area is about 20 to 25%, when if you're going by the figures, it's actually realistically more 10%. So this is how just access to information, just a lot of information, can be a disorienting thing. And also, what you do not know can hurt and haunt you. And I think this is a good example of how something can improve and yet seem worse. Another example would be, imagine having the current news media or current access to information and communication during the First World War. So you'd have to, of course, hold this in a mental universe where the accompanied social situations and technology that would support modern communications would not have also made the reasons for the World War to begin not exist. But imagine having modern communications back in that time. How would it affect the morale of the people, the citizens, of the soldiers? Though the number, just in outright numbers, let alone the percentage of military casualties today, are far lower than they ever have been in the past, especially in these good old days that a lot of people speak of, yet today people understand the effect of this. Coffins returning draped in flags are banned from American TV. Why is this? They understand the effect of it. They understand the perception that this gives to what's happening. I think the access to and sharing of information reduces the chance of a hot world war existing. There is a correlation between advances in technology and better living conditions. The knowledge we have of the negative to evil deeds, from pets nibbling on fingers to world wars, serves as a deterrent for their repetition. What do you imagine would happen if an entire swath of a nation's population began to send message of actual massacres? We already live in a world where the relatively inconsequential subjects of first world hashtavism are actually given more than just lip service. What would the reaction be to actual horror? As I am on the topic, there's a question for these first world protesters who are in the streets. I mean, I get most of you are nonviolent. But is the cause that you're out there for truly just like the one that was being protested by the historical giants that rose out of some of the lowest points in our collective humanity that you claim to walk shoulder and shoulder with? Is your cause, is your plight really that dire? So information is a very powerful tool, and as I said before, we treat good information and bad information in a different way. We usually find bad information, things that are negative, worth commenting on more than things that are good. So imagine in the past, in a week, you'd hear maybe 10 stories, and 80% of those stories, 8 of those stories were good, 2 of those stories were bad. So you'd think, okay, there's 8 people out there having a better time than I'm having right now. Today, you hear 100 stories in that week, and you hear about 80 people having a better time than you're having right now, and you may think the world is a lot better and could be a lot better for you, and actually could be, I think, but it might make you seem a lot sadder than you would be in the past if you only heard about 8 people having a better time than you were having at that time. So yes, the world can be a very dark place, and horrible things still do happen. But the way some people speak of the world today, the utter fear that they must live in on a day-to-day basis if they believe what they say, is a horrid thing to see. To see that some people actually think that the world is a place bereft of anything that's good, when I think it's quite the contrary. It was a darker place in the past, but has now woken up to some sort of reality. Slowly by slowly, we're getting the ability to be actually closer in touch with the way things are and have more control and agency in our day-to-day lives. And I think we need to keep talking about this. We need to keep sharing this information. We need to keep asking the questions, and what leads to this, what leads to that, what led to this, and what led to that. And that's how we can continue this process of reducing the amount of suffering that goes on in the world. So I think we should continue to be aware of the bad things that happen in the world, and also cognizant that the potential for harm may be higher, but at this time, don't forget that there's also good things happening in the world. Okay, so that's it for this video, and the illustration that was going on the screen is of Marlon Manson from the Beautiful People video and his song. Really like that song, the beautiful people, the beautiful people. But yeah, da da da. Anyway, great song. We're to listen to that after this. But I always think this is fitting with this because if you guys remember the Columbine school shooting, which was years back, I think this was when I was still in high school, so this is in the 90s. When that came out, people were saying, yes, people like Marlon Manson, the shooters, or one of the shooters had listened to Marlon Manson, and they were saying that, yes, people like Marlon Manson are the people who are responsible for making the country collapse. They're going to usher in this terror, this wave of terror, this wave of horror, and this wave of violence, and this social breakdown. And that did not happen. That's not what's happened. You know, that's the whole the beautiful people thing also, that the perception of people see the beautiful people even in those dark places. I don't know if that's actually going to work with this video, but yeah, that's the illustration for the video. So links below to merchandise store where you can buy designs like this and other stuff on shirts and phone casings and tote bags and things like that. Whatever the sales I'm making from that is going to help me just continue making videos like this, and just part of my art in my life, and make you look good too wearing it. So that's it. Like, share, and subscribe. Till the next video. Goodbye.